Look, every time I talk about West Virginia, y'all give me endless crap in my comments. Well, too bad, because we're going to talk about them again. There's a couple of really important stories coming out of West Virginia, and they're not going to go the way that you think. I'm not fucking kidding when I say that these stories are really significant and they're not getting the kind of traction that they should. Now, a couple of months ago, I did a series of videos about West Virginia. In particular, the way that West Virginia has gone from being solidly blue to being very, very red. I think the state went 70-something% for Trump in the last election. Sorry, I didn't bother to pull up the numbers. And I know that some counties were as high as like 86%. And the way in which Appalachia and West Virginia in particular have supported Donald Trump has really broken my brain a little bit, because this is the part of the country that has always been about working class people. This is the heart of the labor movement. This is the Battle of Blair Mountain. This is the Paint Creek cabin strike. This is Mother Jones. Like, I don't understand how these folks have listened to and believed the lies of a billionaire. And they thought that he was a populist. They thought that he was going to care about working class people. I understand he preyed on their poverty. He made a lot of promises to them. He promised to bring back this dark, heavy industrial age of big coal, rather than helping them transition to more sustainable forms of industry and bringing them lasting careers and modernization. He was like, no, we're going to go back to coal. And again, these are people who face generational poverty. They have been lied to by the government over and over, exploited by big corporations over and over. These are communities that don't have reliable running water, don't have reliable electricity, high rates of poverty, poor health outcomes, low education, high rates of Medicaid and SNAP and TANF usage. And yet they supported Donald Trump, and I've always been baffled. And then I saw this piece with Bernie Sanders and More Perfect Union that went and interviewed folks in Appalachia who are realizing that they've been lied to. They've been told an awful lot about the Democrats that's not true, but also they've been lied to and let down by the Democrats. The kind of prosperity that the Clintons promised the country never came to these folks. The kind of prosperity that Obama promised never arrived for these folks. And so they didn't see Joe Biden bring prosperity to their communities either. And they really got hoodwinked by Trump. And whenever I say that, people in my comments are like, no, they're just a bunch of racists, and the only reason that they voted for Donald Trump is racism. And I'm not denying that racism is a component, but that's not accurate. And I really encourage y'all to go watch that More Perfect Union piece, because I think it's really eye-opening. And I've been saying, if we want to look at the way the tide is turning for the Republicans, the way that so many exploited working class Americans are realizing they've been lied to by the Republicans, who are the party of pedophile protectors. They are the Epstein class, right? The way that West Virginia is moving and acting and waking up in this moment, I think it's very telling. And it's not everybody, but there are significant ways in which there have been changes over the last few weeks. But first, I want to go back to the coal industry for just a moment, because coal and the way that big corporations and the government have worked together to fuck over West Virginia is it's the entire reason that they're living in poverty. And it's a lot of the reason that out of their desperation, they believe the lies of Donald Trump and they voted for him. It's why whoever runs for president next time and whoever is running for other elected office, they have to be able to create a good quality of life. They have to work for working class people, not for the billionaires, not for AIPAC, not for dark money, not for big crypto, but for working class people who have been denied the American dream for generations. Donald Trump promised them that dream. He promised them he would make America great again, but then he's just lied to them. He's failed at every turn. People are losing their Medicaid. People are losing school funding. People are looking at their health clinics closing. And once again, it's the same old story. The federal government, Donald Trump, and Big Coal working together, all buddy-buddy to fuck over West Virginia. In fact, just a couple of days ago, the coal mining industry had this... Oh, God, let me just show you.
In just a moment, I will sign an executive order that directs the Department of War to work directly with coal plants on the new power purchasing agreements, ensuring that we have more reliable power and stronger and more resilient grid power. And we're going to be buying a lot of coal through the...
Okay, hang on. Before I show you the next clip, do you hear how much saliva is in Donald Trump's mouth? The way that he's slurring, but also he's unable to control how much spit is in his mouth. That's a big dementia symptom. As somebody who cared for my father who had Lewy body dementia, that progressive slurring of the speech, and also just like the unregulated saliva, just so indicative of dementia. Now, Donald Trump has this weird fixation with the Gilded Age and this dark industrial, like dirty, gross industrial model. He just signed an executive order today, basically being like, no warning labels on glyphosate. Yay, glyphosate everywhere. Anyway, he loves pollution, right? Any ways that he can deregulate so that corporate polluters can have bigger profit margins while they fuck the environment and fuck workers. He's super down with that. But he wants this kind of dark, dirty, coal-driven, Gilded Age version of the United States. He's always been obsessed with coal. And he's gutted a bunch of Joe Biden's infrastructure funding, actually pulled back money illegally. Congress should have stopped him, that has already been allocated to the states. He's stopped all of that. For all of these deeply red communities, he's afraid of wind, he's afraid of solar. He doesn't want to move forward. He wants to take this country back. MAGA is a regressive movement, trying to take us back to a time when we were frailer, weaker, less prosperous. We all struggled harder. Everything was worse, right? For everybody except the billionaires. That's what Donald Trump wants. So of course he's going to love big coal. He's going to be super down with more and more coal. And also deregulation, so it's easier for big coal to exploit workers and end up with more incidents and more health issues and more pollution. And big coal loves Donald Trump, right? Because they didn't like progressive electeds who were like, let's look to the future. Let's look at how we can create a more stable future and a more sustainable future through these kind of renewables, through solar and wind, which are both now very cheap, very affordable, super good sources of power. I don't know about you, but when I think about evil corporations in the United States, who are the biggest fuckwads running this country? The most evil, corrupt shitbags? I think of coal. Coal's up there. Coal's in my top 3. So of course they're going to be courting Donald Trump real hard.
Sir, to show our appreciation, the trophy says the undisputed champion of beautiful, clean coal. Thank you, sir.
Biden and the radical left wanted to abolish coal. They did everything they could, everything possible. But on day one of this administration, I ended the war on coal. We terminated the Green New Scam, and we withdrew from the unfair, one-sided Paris Climate Accord.
Yeah, they sure know how to play Donald Trump like a fiddle, don't they? They just got to offer him a fake trophy, and he's like, yeah, let's leave the Paris Climate Accord. Let's just sign a big fat military contract for the coal industry. They're claiming they're creating jobs and bringing back big coal, but just days after this embarrassment here, we found out that there are layoffs at 7 operation sites in West Virginia, and more than 500 miners are losing their jobs. One of the workers who's going to be laid off said, as I walked through the parking lot, I kind of felt the gut punch. Living in Logan County, coal is king. By the way, the Republican state senator for this part of West Virginia, Senator Rupi Phillips, said, I'll be praying that something breaks loose for the industry. How about y'all stop hanging on coal to provide your everything? How about you create an alternative industry that will supply the needs of your community rather than hanging on to the failing coal industry and all of their lies and fake promises? But here in the last few days, we're really starting to see signs that West Virginians are not buying the shit that Donald Trump is shoveling at them anymore. They're realizing this is a man he epitomizes the Epstein class. He runs the Epstein class. He's a billionaire who lied to us and hoodwinked us, and he's not going to make America great for us at all. It doesn't mean they become suddenly woke, y'all. Just so you know, when people start to leave MAGA, when people start to realize they've been lied to, it doesn't mean they suddenly look and talk exactly how you want them to. It doesn't mean they adopt all of your politics. I think people expect it to be like a light switch, and it's not. So this past week, we heard from Republican West Virginia Secretary of State Chris Warner that he will not release personal voter information to the Department of Justice. Now, multiple blue state secretaries of state, including my Secretary of State, Tobias Reed, have already stood up and said, no, we're not turning over this information. But a number of Republican secretaries of state have. They've given over that information, and yet Chris Warner, a Republican, was like, no, I'm not going to do that. He said, West Virginians entrust me with their sensitive personal information. Turning it over to the federal government, which is contrary to state law, will simply not happen. State law is clear. Voter lists are available in a redacted format from my office, but I will not be turning over any West Virginians' protected information. He went on to say, my responsibility is first and foremost to the citizens of West Virginia. We will comply with the law, which does not allow us to release protected data. He concluded, West Virginians expect secure elections and the assurance that their personal information is protected. That remains my commitment, and I have no interest in turning over the entire state's unredacted voter list for some brownie points from the federal government. So while it's absolutely significant that the Republican Secretary of State is pushing back against Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice, I think there's an even more compelling story that tells us a little bit, gives us a little bit of a window into how regular West Virginians are feeling about what the regime is trying to do. Now, over the last couple of weeks, there have been a number of protests across West Virginia with regular, ordinary folks getting arrested. They are protesting the violence and brutality of ICE, the murders of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. By the way, I think there's already 5 West Virginia No Kings Day protests planned, and the map's only been up for a couple of days. The really big news is out of a town called Romney, who has already registered their No Kings Day event, by the way. You know, Stephen Miller and ICE are trying to put these giant concrete concentration camps all around the country. They're trying to buy up land and warehouses, and they're trying to massively expand their detention of human beings, right? They want to imprison hundreds of thousands of people in this country for as long as they want to. We heard from the Trump regime just today that DHS is changing their policy to say that people they've abducted who have legal status, who are going through the asylum process and other processes to get their green card, that they're going to be held under reevaluation indefinitely. They're basically saying we can keep people forever inside these concentration camps and they can never get out, even if they're not here undocumented, right? The reason that they're doing that is because these two corporations, Geo Group and CoreCivic, make billions and billions and billions of dollars a year in government contracts keeping people in these facilities. So if these corporations can see the big business, I'm going to get really upset, see the big business of keeping people contained in warehouses in concrete concentration camps for forever, right? Forever. And they can expand that from tens of thousands of people to hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. It's just a cash cow for them. Warehousing human beings is a cash cow for Geo Group and CoreCivic. And we're seeing communities all across the country, Kansas City, Utah, Georgia, who've all said, no, we're not doing this. And the latest is Romney, West Virginia. We're starting to see communities all over the country, including in deeply red parts of the United States, like Hampshire County, where Romney is located, that went more than 70% for Donald Trump. They're starting to push back. They're starting to say, no, we're not doing this. We don't want a concrete concentration camp in our county. We don't want our neighbors abducted and funneled away into a concrete concentration camp. No, we don't want our town council and our local law enforcement to cooperate with ICE. We're not entering into agreements with you. We're not turning over information. We're not ratting out our neighbors. We're not doing this shit with you. So Romney is this little town, and ICE wanted to come in and create this contract, this agreement. Like, hey, y'all are going to be buddy-buddy with us. Y'all are going to be little rat finks for fascism with us. And they were like, no, we're not. We're not doing that. We're kind of at this moment in the United States where towns and counties have to decide which side are you on, right? Are they going to play Vichy and collaborate with the Trump regime and roll over and let them do whatever they want? Are they going to enter into these agreements? Are they going to let detention facilities, concentration camps get built in their town? Or are they going to stand up? Are they going to be on the side of the resistance? Are they going to say, this is deeply wrong, we know it, we've had enough, this is the line for us? And what we're seeing all over the place, again, rural Georgia, rural West Virginia, we're seeing it in Pennsylvania, we're seeing it in Utah. Folks are saying, fuck no, fuck off, we don't want to do a fascism here. We're not down with this. This is way too much. This is way too far. These are conservative people, right? More than 70% voted for Donald Trump. These are not like woke, they're not like Portlanders like me, right? These are people who are still very conservative. They haven't flipped all of their politics. They're just saying that this is not right. This is not right, and we're not going to stand for it. So the Hampshire Review, which is the little county paper for Romney, actually broke this story. Participation in an immigration and customs enforcement program, increasingly popular among agencies and communities throughout the state, was shot down Monday night by town council members, a majority of whom indicated they wanted no association with the agency's increasingly controversial activities. So basically, the town council was presented with this request to sign a memorandum of agreement to partner with ICE. The police board had okayed this and put it forward to the mayor, Beverly Keatle, and city council. or I guess town council. Romney's about 1,700 people. So I'm not surprised that the police board was all down to be buddy-buddy with ICE, but the town council was not. So this 287G program enables designated local officers to perform certain immigration functions under ICE's direction and oversight. Right, these designated officers receive online training in return for their participation. The sheriff's department gets paid money, right? $100,000 for vehicles, $7,500 of equipment per trained officer. All money that could have been pouring into this community. And we know that West Virginia is desperately poor and desperately short on resources, and they're even worse off since Trump has pulled back so much funding from the state. Right. So, of course, the argument is under this program, the federal government will give the town money. So the sheriff and the police board tried to say, like, this is money that our town really needs. And we're really rural. There's not going to be that much immigration activity going on. So we're going to get all this money from the federal government. But town council was like, no, right? We're not going to be bought and paid for. There's no such thing as money without strings, especially from Donald Trump's regime. It's blood money. It's tainted money. It's money for you to participate in an ethnic cleansing, right? There's no amount of money you could pay me to join the Nazis. There's no amount of money you could pay me to be on team ethnic cleansing. And the town council of Romney was the same way. They were like, no, we know that we are strapped. We know that the town could really use the funds. We're not taking it anyway. I appreciated this statement from Councilman Roy Knight. I don't want this town to have contact or even associate with ICE. Thank you to council members Hott, Knight, O'Brien, and Robin Pancake who voted no. When I say that our most effective resistance is done on a hyper-local level, this is what I mean. It is all of us pushing back in any way that we can, even ways that can seem small. This was not a small way for Romney, West Virginia. They could have really used that money. They could have really used that federal grant, but it would have required them to sell their souls, and they were not going to do it. We all have to make sacrifices in order to defend democracy. We all have to make sacrifices in order to stop the regime. I know people understand that now. And it's so good to see more and more Americans who are willingly undertaking those sacrifices on behalf of their immigrant neighbors, on behalf of standing up for what's right. But man, y'all, it's the hyperlocal resistance. This regime, right, is located in Washington, D.C., but they have to get their claws in every community across this country in order to cement their authoritarian plan, in order to topple democracy. They have to come for all of us in our backyards, right? Where can we do the most good? Where can we push back the most effectively? Right where we live. We all have a duty right now to organize locally to make sure that we resist this push from ICE to get these contracts of agreement, these grants that they want to roll out in exchange for our local elected officials entering into agreements with ICE that I guarantee you will come back to bite everybody. And not only that, like at what cost to your soul and to your psyche. We all have an obligation right now to learn our city ordinances, interface with our local electeds, learn what does our land use board look like? What are our zoning commissions doing, right? How can we make sure that we don't get concentration camps in our neighborhood? How can we make sure that nobody is willing to let a concentration camp come into their neighborhood? Nobody is willing to let their local law enforcement or their local city councilor, anybody where they live, have a positive working relationship with ICE. It's fuck ICE from every corner of this country. Yeah, I know. I'm sure DHS has already subpoenaed my information. It's out there. Fuck ICE, fuck these motherfuckers, and all of the illegal things that they're doing, destroying this country, violating our constitutional rights, inflicting a reign of terror, and spending tens of billions. It's going to be hundreds of billions of our taxpayer dollars to do it. It is our civic duty. It's our patriotic duty as American citizens to resist this tyranny. I can't see it any other way, right? It is a deeply American thing to resist tyranny, and that is what we are seeing in Romney, West Virginia, and all across the country. And I hope we'll see more of this from West Virginia. I hope West Virginia is getting back to their roots, back to the Battle of Blair Mountain, understanding that there's no war but the class war. It's us versus the super rich. It's us versus the billionaires. It's us versus the Epstein class. And who's in the White House right now? Who's in the White House right now? A billionaire in the Epstein class, a billionaire in the Epstein files more than 1 million times, who is actively engaging in a cover-up, denying justice to Jeffrey Epstein's victims and fucking over all of us. The corruption is rampant. He just announced today he was taking $10 billion of our taxpayer money and giving it to his board of peace or whatever. He's just dipping in. He's treating our taxpayer dollars as if they're his own personal kitty. He can do whatever he wants with. Just like he thought he could do whatever he wanted to what? Jeffrey Epstein's girls and women that they trafficked. West Virginia and Red America, it's all of us versus the Epstein class. That's the battle here. It's not against our immigrant neighbors. It's not against our fellow Americans in poverty. It's us versus the billionaires. It's us versus Donald Trump.